Hello, and welcome to the Wild Blue Podcast, perspectives on aviation lives, lifestyles, and business.
Hello, and welcome to another Wild Blue Podcast, perspectives in aviation lives, lifestyles, and business. We're certainly excited today. Chris Kirk, welcome back.
Thanks, Todd.
My name's Todd Mitten, and we have a special guest today, Colonel Ed Black. Ed is the wing commander of the 139th Airlift Wing at St. Joseph and also a United Airlines pilot. But he's here just to talk not so much about even his career in the Guard, but his aviation interests and his what he does to keep busy. I think Ed's an interesting guy, and we're going to have fun talking about it. So, Ed, how are you today?
Good. Half as interesting as Todd mentioned, but that's not doing too
That's a
bad.
high bar, man.
It's not doing too bad if I can maintain that.
Please. I could do this by myself, but
Right.
we got to have guests.
Gotta have guests. Well, thanks for the invite. It's a pleasure.
No, we're glad. How did you get into the Guard and into flying? How'd you get started?
Oh, wow. Back when high schools had a little bit of flexibility with their curriculum, I had a World War II pilot. His name was Kenneth Ludke, and he taught private pilot ground school as a class in my little high school up in DeKalb, Missouri. So I had private pilot ground school done as a senior in high school, and he took us on a ride. I think it was in a Cherokee 6 up at St. Joseph.
Oh, really? Yeah.
Rosecrans, and I got my first taste of being in an airplane, and that was that, as they said. You know, I just kind of continued on that career and just kind of always knew that's what I wanted to do based off of that initial contact.
And you were enlisted at first in the Guard, right?
I did. You know, I watched C-130s fly over my house. I tell the story that I was working in a bean field, hoeing weeds out of a bean field when a C-130 flew overhead, and I said, boy, that looks a lot better than what I'm doing now. So decided I better find out more about those C-130s, and that combined with my Mr. Ludke's influence on aviation.
Where'd you learn to fly?
I actually started at Millie Earhart over in Atchison. Had a little Cessna 150 and a CFI over there that I got up to solo with, and then I finished out my private at Express Flight.
Okay,
in St. Joseph, and a little yellow Tomahawk.
Yeah, yes.
Remember that little yellow
of course,
Tomahawk is what we called it, but it was a Tomahawk up there.
I will fill in a little background here that I worked with Ed for close to 30 years, probably 28 years in the Air National Guard. So we've been long time friends. May be a strong word. No, we are. So that's probably how I can convince Chris, how I can convince people to come talk to us, because
26 years of Utah, that's saying a lot for anybody, I'm telling you.
I hope all the stories don't come out, but some of them may.
That's what I came for.
So you obviously went on eventually to officer training, pilot training. Where did you go to pilot training, and were there any instructor pilots at that base that were really a problem?
There was a few in the Standoval area.
Yeah, is that right?
Real hammers.
What base was that?
So I went to Vance Air Force Base in Enid, Oklahoma in '94. Had the privilege of flying the T-37 and then also the T-38 aircraft. One of the last guys at St. Joseph that got to fly the T-38 before they did a split off and sent all of us heavy C-130 guys through a different track. So got to break the speed of sound in a T-38. Still got that T-shirt, and that was an awesome privilege to be able to fly that plane and be in that era. So it's pretty cool.
Now, Chris, did you ever? You don't remember, Ed?
No, that's just it. Ed and I were just talking before.
So that's a good thing. If the check pilot doesn't know you, you're good.
I don't know. Usually, I'm afraid somebody say, "Oh yeah, you hooked me." But, I don't know. We were just talking offline here a little bit ago and realized that we were there at the same time, which is kind of interesting.
It is cool.
It is. That's it's interesting how all paths keep leading back to Enid in our lives, but that's so eventually. You were full-time at St. Joseph, and then you got hired by Continental Airlines. Tell us about that a little bit, and what happened as your career progressed.
Right. Well, so in 2008, I'd been on 3 rotations to Afghanistan and Iraq with the 139th Airlift Wing, as many of us have, and didn't see an end in sight there. And in fact, that was true. There hasn't been an end in sight since our. We've still got some folks, as you know, Todd, deployed over there from the unit. So
Yes.
But in that time, I was looking at looking down the barrel of deployments and thought, boy, I need to find something that maybe give me some stability outside the Air Guard. And I mistakenly thought that the airline industry would give me that stability. So I did get a job with Continental Airlines with some help of some friends at the Guard, longtime friends at the Guard, and I went down to Continental training in Houston, Texas, and the first day I showed up, they were handing profit sharing checks out to all the guys in the training center, and boy, Continental was on fire, and it was a great decision. And then a couple weeks later, they passed the age 65 rule, which took the age of airline pilots out to age 65, and I was furloughed within 6 months. So decided, boy, this Guard thing doesn't sound too bad. So I got back in to the military life and ended up moving out to Washington, D.C., and spent an amazing 4 years out in Washington doing different things out in Washington related to my military career. But so that's how I got in the airline industry, was in 2008 with Continental.
Chris, when Ed went to D.C., that was quite a change, and a lot of his career, I know from personal involvement when I was still in the Guard, was influenced by that time there, and I know Ed learned a lot, and you're probably shorting that part of your career on the importance, but you did a lot while working in Washington, D.C. at the Guard Bureau.
Yeah.
What sort of programs?
Well, I actually I went out there with just to have a paycheck. I needed a job, but I went out there on some special SOCOM orders to work on a small program, the RC-26.
SOCOM is Southcom for our listeners.
Special Ops.
Oh, Special Ops. I thought it was Southcom you were involved.
SOCOM.
Oh, okay.
Not Southcom is Southcom. SOCOM is Special Ops Command. So I did some SOCOM, now you got me confused. SOCOM orders, and I was the guy in Washington, D.C., attempting to keep all the resources going to a small fleet of aircraft in the Guard called the RC-26. And its mission was to be a manned surveillance platform, and originally was set up to do counter-drug operations in the United States. So we'd have guardsmen that flew RC-26, and they'd spend their time doing surveillance on drug networks, and networks of trying to take down a network of drug dealers and drug manufacturers and suppliers, and so that was a pretty cool mission prior to 2003, and they were very successful. They that mission directory liaison with the counter drug folks on the ground and local law enforcement and FBI proved to be a very potent mix of team there, and they were pretty successful at taking down drug networks. Well, that translated almost perfectly into taking terrorist networks down.
Oh, yeah.
And so the Guard deployed the RC-26s to the theater of operations over in Iraq and Afghanistan, and we're pretty successful at doing the same thing they were doing here with drug networks, but they did it with terrorist networks in that area. So that was interesting. It was right out of the gate, something brand new. And then I moved on to programs like the C-130. I got a chance to be the program manager really for the C-130 program for the Air National Guard. So, a couple hundred planes and all this. So it was a neat experience to learn it from the other side of the coin, not just an operator, but also managing the program. So.
But you had some time off from when you first got out of the Guard and the airline. So you were off for how long between going back?
So I applied in fall of 2007 for Continental, got hired pretty quickly in January, and I went on SOCOM orders probably in June of 2008. So it was really quick.
That was pretty quick, okay.
Pretty quick, yeah. Didn't have a lot of time. I think maybe Continental, maybe 40, 50 hours in a 737 on the line before I got given the gate. So not a lot of flying.
But you got your foot in the door.
Got my foot in the door, as we all know. That's important with the
That is
airlines,
interesting.
so, yeah.
And eventually, you worked your way back to St. Joseph, and what has happened in your career since, say, 2012 or whatever, when you came back?
Right. Well, I had the opportunity to take command of a unit at St. Joseph at the 139th called the Advanced Airlift Tactics Training Center. And I'll tell you, because I've had almost every job on base, that's one of the best jobs on base, is being the commander of that unit. They get to train 18 allied nations, Marines, Air Force of all components, Guard, Reserve, and active duty. Just in a really kind of a little known unit in an unassuming guard base in St. Joseph, Missouri, that does some pretty high-speed tactical training for the mobility air forces of the world. So we'll see C-17s on the ramp, G-222s from Europe. We had C-160s, which is the German Transall, which is kind of their equivalent to C-130, and then all the C-130 variants around the world. Our partners around the world come in, and what our unit does there is train them how to survive and operate in a wartime environment. Bottom line, don't get shot down.
Yeah.
So, and I think we've been pretty successful. There's probably about 500-600 students a year that go through there in various courses, and at the end of the day, we're left with in my opinion, a much more tactically sound mobility air force that can survive and operate in the world. And it's a pretty dangerous world out there when you consider shoulder launch missile capability, from the small operator in a field all the way up to peer on peer fight with like a Russia or China. I mean, some of the systems that we're going up against are pretty impressive. So far we're doing good.
They all have a way to potentially shoot down a C-130.
But we've been pretty
And
successful.
and that's the thing. We've avoided it. Yeah,
I learned something. I didn't realize that you did other airframes besides the C-130. So I was up in St. Joe a couple weeks ago having breakfast, and there were a couple C-17s sitting out on the
Yeah, they're
ramp.
going through our course.
So they're going through the course, huh?
Yep.
Okay.
Our instructors will. So it's really kind of an entrepreneurial course, because the other commands that want to send their folks through, they spend their own resources, their own flying. We call it in the Air Force or flying hour program. So they'll spend all of their own resources to send their crews to us, and they're fully trained tactical crews. And then since it's a big cargo plane, we could put our instructors in the cockpit with them and take them through the paces. And
But not just Guard or Reserve, we're talking active duty as well.
Oh.
active duty, Guard, Reserve, the Marine
Okay.
Corps sends 3 or 4 year. The C-17s you saw, we've had Australian C-17s on the ramp. All the European countries come over with their tactical airlift planes and fly with us. So
The Japanese, the Israelis. I mean, it's
Japanese,
crazy how.
Israelis, yeah.
I had no idea.
So if you're flying around St. Joe, Missouri, you may be in the pattern with, that plane may not be just a St. Joseph 139th Airlift Wing C-130. It could be any nation in the world, allied nation in the world coming in, or any component of the Air Force or Marine coming in. So
It's fascinating, and I know, you became the operations group commander after that, and then you moved to wing commander, and now as a wing commander, you oversee not only that school but all the operations going on up there. And there's so much that happens at that small guard unit. It's just people just have no idea, and that falls to you as your responsibility. Tell us about your day-to-day life as wing commander at that unit.
Well, the way you put it, Todd, sounds kind of daunting. Try not to think about all that shit. But, it's a little city up there to support the operations. So we have, obviously a big maintenance group. Our mission support group supports the facilities, infrastructure, all the things that make it happen. Our cops, all that. We've got a medical group that help everybody stay, healthy and in compliance and get their flight physicals done, for instance. And so it really is a team sport, is what I call it, to have those aircraft on the ramp and fly those aircraft, and the way that we fly them and all the partners we bring in. It takes an incredible team to pull it all off. and so that's what I'm in charge of. And so it's a heck of a privilege to be able to talk about them, to be able to represent them, to have them in the have them in my thoughts all the time. I think it would, Todd, you'd probably echo this as a local guy growing up around here, love of aviation. I certainly have been the recipient of the experience of the 139th Airlift Wing has changed my personal vector in life dramatically from what it might have been without a local guard unit available to me. So I look at it as it's my job to keep a viable guard unit. So, some kid hoeing beans, we don't do that anymore, spraying beans, I guess. But some kid walking around in a local town looks up, sees a plane, and has a dream of service and flying, and has an opportunity here locally to do it.
And they can do that. I think that's important to. I don't want to put words in your mouth, but I know you would point out that recruiting and retention is always a big deal. So, if you're a listener to this podcast and or you have a friend or a son or a daughter or something like that, opportunities abound there, don't they?
We would like to hire about 200 a year. So there's plenty of opportunity. And if you're not interested in the aircrew side of it and flying, which probably your listeners are, but like I said, we're a small city. There's all kinds of disciplines up there. I call it the best federally funded VOTEC in this region. So, you can join the Guard with a pretty reasonable commitment, learn a skill, have college paid for. It's a full ride scholarship right now to join our unit, and learn a valuable skill that would help you out and be connected to great people like Todd Mitten.
There you go.
Well,
that's a selling point.
I'm
I'm just a retiree. You can't pay for that experience in life.
I am just a retiree.
I've told Todd this story before, but there's very few things in life I would do over. But if I had the opportunity to go guard or reserve, I would do it in a heartbeat. But I was sheltered. I was naive. I went through ROTC at KU. I show up at pilot training on the first day, and we got these 3 guard guys. And they're telling us they're already going to such, and we're like, what? What do you mean? You're going to an F4, you're already going to an F-16 or an F-15 to 3 of them.
Yeah. Wow.
And why didn't they tell us about it? I knew nothing about it. I grew up in this area. Of course, St. Joe at that time, that was a long way away.
Right.
Topeka was a long way away.
Right.
So there's a great guard unit, Topeka right now. 190th Air Refueling Wing's a phenomenal unit.
So if you're,
same type of opportunities.
Yeah. If you're, especially like a kid, I'm always telling them, look at the Guard and the Reserve. Get to know those guys because what a great way to go. And have that camaraderie that you have, and you have, for your whole career. Unlike an active duty guy who's moving around every 3 years, you build friendships, but you don't have those lifelong relationships.
Yeah, it's a blessing.
It really is. It's been fun, and we do take advantage of it, don't we?
Some more than the others.
Yeah, but the real tie.
That's how you vectored that off.
I want you to tell me about. Flying. I mean, I know your real love up there. At the end of the day, it may be you can say it's the people, but you love flying that airplane and that C-130. What are your thoughts? I mean, what's neat about the C-130? We have a lot of general aviation, I think, interested people on our who listen to our podcast, and I think that that airplane sometimes is flown a lot like a general aviation VFR airplane. Tell us about that.
It's such a golden age of flying aircraft, Todd. I mean, it's you just assume these days that there's a bunch of intervention with autopilots and automation and a lot of the technologies that we deal with day-to-day basis. There's more power in my iPhone than there is in that C-130 right now, which translates into still having that connection to stick and rudder skills, still having that connection to the use of the whole crew, everybody's, that old, I think it's a dying art to really command a crew and be able to do the tactical things we do with no automation, and it's just human brain power and commitment to the mission that makes it happen. I mean, we fly 300 feet off the ground. If you're around here, you see us come by occasionally, but 300 feet off the ground is our standard tactical elevation, and we do it hand flown the whole route. Our airdrop mission, we can put pretty much anything that'll fit in the back within a couple of 100 feet with the use of a navigator. What aircraft has a navigator still on board, but the navigator's art form of doing airdrop and being able to put those loads where they need to, and we've done that in Afghanistan and Iraq to great effect, saved lives undoubtedly by resupplying through the airdrop stuff that we do. But all of that is such a, in my viewpoint, you're looking at round dials by and large, you're sticking rudder in it, and you're doing some exciting work in an airplane that I think would appeal to all of your general aviation crowd. Keeps me coming back.
I think it's, and I appreciate the shout out to navigators there, as our listeners may, if they've listened to a number of our podcasts, that's what my career was in the military, and the interesting part is that gosh, where was I going with that thought? I had a just a fascinating thought, but that you get to work as a crew and as a team, and it was always very rewarding to do it well.
Well, I think another aspect of it, Todd, is we're not just flying around the flagpole. This airlift mission that we do up there is a worldwide mission. So you get to take that stick and rudder kind of old school aviation skill set with a crew, and then you go travel the world and see some pretty phenomenal things. I mean, you and I have seen South America, the Pacific, certainly the Middle East, Europe, Canada. I mean, I'm just naming them off here, but you fly an old school plane around the world, and there's a bit of nostalgia in doing that,
And challenge,
really cool. And challenge,
That's what I was thinking about. I was going to ask you about physically flying that airplane. To me, and I got some stick time in it over the years, and to me it was like flying a Baron or something. Chris, it was like it was really just. It didn't feel like a jet or anything, because it wasn't a jet, but it just more like flying a big twin in a way, even though it's a 4-engine airplane. Mm-hmm. I don't know what your thoughts are on that, but that's the way it was kind of easy, honestly, in terms of just just actually doing. Now, I'm flying it in generally good weather and that kind of thing. It's not easy in the sense when you throw in all the other challenges that come along, but these guys are good at it. So I watched a lot of it, and it was always rewarding. And you're right, the trips were the best part to me. That's what I missed the most about being the Guard, along with hanging out with the guys and gals, but the actual trips were just always a highlight. You never had a bad trip. Right. Now, Ed, when you look around, that brings up a point. As we know, in the C-130, the basic crew of 5, and you were getting ready to go on a trip, and you were excited because you thought, man, this is all a great group that I'm going with. Yeah. But you always knew there was always one guy on the crew that was a screwball. So if you looked around and you thought, man, he's a good guy, and he's a good guy, and she's a good gal, and he's a good... Well, that leaves still one screwball. Who might it be?
You're the weak link. Yeah. I've been able to identify a weak link. I certainly have been the weak link on certain occasions. So...
Oh, we got a lot of jokes. There's no doubt about it. We have to number.
So how much are you deploying, though? What's the, how long can somebody expect to be gone?
Well, there is some volunteerism aspect to it. I mean, if you join the Guard, you are under, orders to involuntary mobilize at the whim of the president and our nation. So you can be involuntary mobilized, and certainly Todd and I have been involuntarily mobilized. But at the pace that we're doing now in the Air Guard and in the Air Force, nobody's been involuntarily mobilized that didn't want to go. I generally find that I have more people that want to deploy than we have slots to deploy. So that pace is about every other year. You'd have the opportunity to do, a couple months up to 6 months. And so that, it's a pretty good pace. If you think of the Guard of old, it was 1 weekend a month, 2 weeks a year. That you needed to commit. I would say being an aircrew member at the Guard now is like once a week commitment and about a third of the year job to stay up with everything that we do with a commitment every couple of years to have the possibility to deploy with our C-130s. It just takes the right type of attitude, the right certainly an employer that can support that, outside employer, and most importantly a family unit, a family culture, whatever that family may look like has to be able to support that. So it's a big commitment, but I think it's rewarding at the end of the day. It gives you a little meaning in life that you're doing something, for your nation, for your state. I've walked away every time I've walked off the 130, felt like I got something done,
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah, exactly.
Are you still looking at primarily from inside the organization when you're looking at sending somebody to pilot training?
No, actually, we've. I just saw a pie graph they showed me a couple days ago about our recruiting efforts and specifically our pilots. But I think it's indicative across the rest of the recruiting that we do. And about half of them are off the street.
Really?
So half's off the street. Maybe 40% is homegrown, is what we'd call that. Our enlisted force that's gotten a college degree, like myself, and wanted to be a pilot and got hired from internal. And then we still bring, maybe 10% off of an active duty commitment that are wanting to continue their service. So they'll come in off active duty and sign up for the Guard with some skill set. So,
do most people in the unit, do you find that they take it all the way to retirement?
our retention rate is probably 94%.
No kidding.
Yeah.
Wow.
I guess that more than anything speaks for the belief in the Guard, but specifically in that unit and the culture that's been developed over the years by and carried on by Ed as wing commander. But the culture is inclusive. It's positive. People feel like they're making a difference, and so would you agree, Ed, that that's the...
Yeah, you hear everybody say Guard is family.
Yeah.
And I think we're all members of a family of some way, and there's occasionally you spat with your family, but at the end of the day, it's your family.
Right.
Yeah.
So I think the Guard typifies that very well. The folks that stick around find that I've been there 31 years. Todd, you probably had.
I did 30 years.
30
when I
years.
retired,
So, in a 30-year commitment with one unit, you're going to have some peaks and valleys. But at the end of the day, you've developed a, decades-long family really around you. So, I think it's a unique opportunity in the world to have something you can say you were part of for 30 years.
Yeah.
And a lot of people do it. 94%.
Really?
Yeah.
94%. You have any idea what it is on active duty, what the retention rate is overall? It can't be half of that, can it?
Well, they certainly don't stay 30 years.
Well,
Looking at a
that's true.
20-year retirement. So,
Even-
we do a retention rate of who left this year. So that's a 1 year who stayed in the unit year over year, and it's consistently in the 90s. I think this year was 94. We don't count it if you retirements. Generally have retirements every year, so that's how can we recruit. We have some people that transfer to other Guard units or other military organizations, but the strictly I'm done, I'm out of here, we keep 94% of them. So
Wow.
it's pretty crazy.
I'm curious about kind of the work-life balance thing with you. I mean, you're a senior leader,
Yeah.
and you're in charge of how many personnel?
About 1,200 total folks that work at the base.
So 1,200 folks at the base, all the equipment and everything else you've got going on up there.
Yep.
And then on top of it, you're an airline pilot.
Right.
Family.
Mhm.
So
3 kids.
3 kids. So that's a lot. I mean, how do you balance all that? And how much time are you spending? Let's talk pre-COVID, because it's a
Right.
little weird this year.
Right.
But how much time are you spending there at the unit, or what percentage of your time is there at the unit working on stuff? Because if you're like all the guys I fly with, you're on a trip and you're in your room, you're doing Guard stuff. You're probably taking care of a lot.
Well, wing commander's probably I think wing commander's a lifestyle more than a job. So I think my experience is probably a little different than the normal Guard experience, but I think you do have a triad of commitment there: family, Guard, civilian career, and balancing those things. I mean, it's a long-standing folklore up there, passed down from generation to generation, that if you've got any one of those three really, really happy with you, you're ignoring the other two.
Yeah.
And so I think you kind of ebb and flow through your career and your family and your civilian career. And at times you got to put some commitment to one, and then you got to back off and modulate to another. So I think the balance is more dynamic than it is static. So you're constantly monitoring, hey, and you're making choices like, can I go fly the night line and get some night vision goggle landings and get off the bad boy list and be current, or do I go see the kids' soccer game? And it's a daily choice of balance rather than here's my formulation.
Right.
So I think it's absolutely doable. I was flying, admittedly I was dropping some military leave, if you will, on United, and probably flying a half a line at United. But that was my choice because I wanted to be involved as a leader at the base. And probably for a period of time there, it took a toll on family. So, we've modulated back now with COVID. I'm not flying United very much, at home a lot more. Mm-hmm. So family's taken primacy now. But I think it's everybody going through a Guard career has to decide how to modulate that for their own circumstances. And I think the Guard's pretty friendly about that. So like if you called up to the Guard and said, hey, I've got a graduation to go to, or I've got something I got to be at least at the 139th, we're because we have a long-term 94% retention rate, if we weren't friendly with folks when it came to making the important things in life with their family, we wouldn't be able to retain folks. So that's the metric I use, that we're still doing pretty good at people being able to find a balance in their career and their civilian career and their career at the Guard.
Yeah, that's well put. I think that's very well put. It's a challenge without a doubt every day.
Yes.
Every day something new.
I'll tell you though, one thing the Guard does provide is, at least for me and I know for Todd, was a backstop of stability. If you're going to be in the aviation industry, we've all felt this. It's a bit of a seasonal career. I guess is the way you put it. Yeah. It's a bit of a seasonal career, and the Guard provides a backstop of stability that just can't be beat. And typically, it's on the opposite season of commercial aviation. So as commercial aviation is dropping down, times after 9/11, obviously, and times of war, and commercial aviation drops off, the Guard picks up. So it's a nice compliment, at least for our pilots and our crew members, to have that opposite balancing stability in their lives. So it's a long-term employment insurance is what I call it.
It really is. It really is. I probably said to you, Chris, thank God for Mother Guard. I always maintained a job, and I knew a lot of people in my airline career, the way circumstances went, that were able to or were unable to maintain employment. They're taking jobs flying, in the Far East or something instead, or away from their families, or just losing their houses and stuff when we were all furloughed. And so, I never had to deal with that at all. I maintained employment and was well, and doing a worthwhile job too. So it was beneficial all around.
Yeah.
I want to ask you a little bit. Kind of pivoting away from the Guard, we'll just talk a little about your general aviation. What have you done any general aviation flying in recent times? A little bit or any or?
Yeah, I've got some friends that run the little airport. I live in Atchison, Kansas, and the Amelia Earhart Memorial Airport out there.
Just redid part of that, didn't he?
Working on it. We're working hard. The city of Atchison.
Are you on the airport board or something?
I am on the airport
I was thinking
board
that. I forgot about that. Yeah.
They would question whether I am because I don't show up to a lot of meetings. Balanced as we talked about. But I am, and I've been really proud of Atchison for investing in the airport there. We've cleaned it up and it looks real nice. And there's plans. I think appropriate plans to expand that, but. So my most recent general aviation experience is they got a nice little Cherokee 140 up there that I can take my kids up in. And,
nice.
Just a rental airplane that I can get in the air.
Yeah. And how old are your kids?
So I've got a college kid, a high school kid, and a middle school kid. Wow. So yeah, got it covered.
We've talked a little about talking about general aviation and the airport at St. Joseph, that's a fascinating place. You've been in there a lot, Chris. That is the greatest mix of traffic. The C-130s and the general aviation airplanes, whether it be corporate jets or just guys out on their first solo or something like that. It's a real how about the control tower up there? That's something worth mentioning. Tell us about the control tower at St. Joseph.
Yeah, so the 139th Airlift Wing is a tenant of the city's airport. So the city of St. Joseph owns Rosecrans Memorial Airport, and they own the tower building. But all of the controllers and all the radar controllers and all the airspace is controlled by the Guard. So it's a contract with the FAA, and all of our folks are really, when I say our folks, the military controllers are who does the controlling out there. And it makes it a really cool training environment for us because we can do airdrop on the far side of the field, the little short 1331. Well, it's short for us, but it's a really nice runway for general aviation to have a cross runway like that. But that's where we practice our short field landings and short field takeoffs. And if you see some markings on the runway that look a little strange, those are our landing zones that we're trying to hit when we're practicing our short field takeoff and landings. And we actually, the city's just been an amazing partner. When we do night vision goggle ops, you may see us notamed that we're doing some night vision goggle ops, and we turn every light off on the airfield and continue to operate. So we'll land with lights out and our towers open and running, and if you need to come in, we'll let you in and flip the lights back on to let a general aviation come in. But that partnership with the city of St. Joseph and their facility and the airspace connectivity, absolutely vital to the efficiency of our operation. And if you're a general aviation flying in and around there, I'd encourage you to take advantage of the PAR approach, the precision radar approach. That our military controllers would be very happy to give you a PAR because it's part of their training requirement.
You used to go up there and do them in the 38 all the time.
38, but you can bring your Cessna 150 and do a PAR at the St. Joe, and they'll treat you right. And probably, I defy you to find another place in the nation where you can get a military precision approach radar precision approach into a runway that accessible to general aviation. It's just a really cool thing to have out there.
Yeah,
it is, and that's why I want to talk about the airport. It's a fun place. There's a lot to see. You go up there, there's an airport restaurant. You go watch. You never know what.
If I could put a suggestion in, come on a Wednesday for lunch.
On a Wednesday.
Wednesday for lunch, they have fried chicken.
There you go.
It's the only time you get fried chicken at the Tower restaurant. But if you want to come have a meeting with Colonel Ed Black at the 139, I tend to lean towards a lunch.
Yeah, we'll have to go up there.
We got a company with a lunch plan.
Yeah,
lunch
exactly
plans
right.
on Wednesdays when you'll get the invite.
That's awesome. Well, what's on your horizon, Ed? I mean, you're potentially nearing, I don't know what you're going to do with your military career. Maybe you'll move on. Maybe you'll decide it's time to retire. But even without necessarily, you can get into that if you want. You don't have to. But what's on your horizon over the next few years,
Well, I think like all of us, my horizon's kind of decreased from, years to a couple weeks.
Yeah.
Like I was out just texting my wife, and a soccer game tonight for my son was postponed because of some COVID concerns, and so I think all of us have kind of decreased our time horizon dramatically over the last 6 to 7 months. But for me, so that's kind of helped me in a certain sense. I have a couple weeks time horizon, and I concentrate on what's good for the 139th, and my United career is still there, although it's it's decreased pretty dramatically. So I honestly don't know. Wing commanders, you're one major aircraft accident away from losing your job. You're one, you're one decision from a general officer from finding a new home. So I kind of look at it as it's a privilege every day to come in and do what I do and represent the 139th. So I honestly don't know what's in the future for Ed Black. I think, if it ended today, I'd be a happy man. I'll just put it that way. If I ended today, it'd be a great career and something I could look back on and say, man, this has been a privilege.
Yeah, I understand that because that's the way I felt. At the end of the day, it was well worth it. So
you know what you ought to do for one of your podcasts, Todd, is you ought to read your final speech that you gave when you retired. One of the best speeches I've heard from a retiree, talking about aviation and his love of the aircraft and what he was going to miss about the 139th, and it was all about the flying of the C-130 aircraft and the crew and everything. It's just really phenomenal speech, Todd.
It meant a lot to me, so I try to convey that idea. I've told people I never thought you should go out. I was frustrated when people retired from a unit 30 years, 25, 50, 35 years, right, whatever it may be. Well, thanks everybody, and I like, you got to have more than that. I would love serving with you. Tell me more, So I said, I'm not going to do it that way. That might be a surprise to you, Chris, that I had a lot to say one day.
Really?
Yeah. I don't know. Chris doesn't think I talk enough.
Right.
You got anything else for Ed? Any other?
No, I'm just really thankful you came down here. Thanks. And to me, even as a military guy, I'm still kind of on the outside looking in to the Guard. And like I said, if there was one thing I could ever do over, because I don't think I've ever talked to a Guard guy that hasn't just absolutely loved what they do, and moreover, they're just highly qualified, highly capable people that are. It just seems far more than not, to have a real servant's heart for what they're doing. So they're just grateful to be where they are, and they exude that. Didn't see so much of that on active duty, some of it, but nowhere near it. And I'm just taking a small percentage of the folks that I've ever talked to.
Sure.
So no, I'm just really grateful you're here. So thanks, and I got to get in my logbook now and see if we ever flew together.
Well, if you hook me, I'm going to come back down here and have a chat.
Quibble, I believe they call it. You're going to quibble over that.
Quibble over that grade you gave me, that 88 ride. We may have to have a chat about. But thanks for the opportunity. Todd's promised me lunch, which was most of my motivation. But, I really enjoyed talking to you. Thanks, Todd. Always a pleasure.
Well, this is why I think, Chris, when you wanted to start I had the idea of having a podcast. I think this is exactly the kind of stuff we want to talk about. We're in the aircraft.
Be the Joe Rogan of aviation
yes, exactly.
Yeah,
I could give him a few tips, perhaps. No, we do. We're in the aircraft sales business, but that's just part of what we really do. So anyway, if you do have interest, check us out, flywildblue.com, or give us a call if you have questions, even about the military. I mean, I can at least direct you to some people. So call us at 888-773-4249. And again, thank you, Ed Black. Chris, thank you. We'll talk to you guys in a couple weeks.
Thanks for listening to the Wild Blue Podcast. Find us online at flywildblue.com. And don't forget to subscribe and share.